And here we are once again, another edition of the Duval Dive. I am Kyle Nash, the steer of the game of Jaguar Report. And of course, to your right and on my screen, you like that music that much, Travis. You still jamming. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
My guy, Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country. See, that's called production talent there. If you can find a way to make a mistake, but then blame your co-host so he can keep dancing, everybody wins. What's going on, Travis Holmes?
Man, I'm doing good, relatively speaking, man. My quarterback didn't have to have his leg amputated. Yeah, I'm doing well.
I mean, I suppose we'll get that out of the way, right? Like, I know, listen, I'm taking nothing from Jake Browning coming in lieu of Joey and delivering an excellent game. People were like, if Joe Burrow was playing, the Jaguars would have been flat and worse. I'm not so sure about that. I don't know how you can do much better than the stat line that he put up. Just in light of that, there's one kid only kicks so much rear at one particular moment. There's a capacity issue there. We're definitely going to talk about some of the defensive struggles the Jaguars had in that game and how they can improve it and hope to capitalize in the Cleveland game. But the thing I want to get out of the way was the absolute mash unit of injuries. Again, taking nothing away from what the Bengals did, but obviously the one jumping off the page is Trevor Lawrence going down late in the game with what appears to be a high ankle sprain. As Travis alluded, the amputees were not added to the list here by Trevor Lawrence, so that's a good thing. Walker Little, Andre Cisco, Christian Kirk, who I'm fairly certain will be missing time. I shouldn't say fairly certain. I know he will be missing time against Cleveland, just like Walker Little. And I didn't mention Trey Herndon yet. That's the one I'm missing.
Yeah.
The status of all these players yet to be seen exactly. I think we have a good idea and concept that we don't know about Trevor. I'll put it that way. Like the last time he had a high ankle sprain, Travis was also a short week, and he started against the Saints in a game that it could be argued the Jags should have lost, but also led the team in rushing. So I don't know what we're doing there. That being said, he also had Walker Little for that game. We'll get in more to where you think he's going to start that in Cleveland next week coming up here. But there were a lot of things going on with the defensive struggles. Travis, I can make the argument that this defensive outing in particular was worse than even that with the Texans. I'll let you make that decision as we go along. But we were talking leading up to the show, and you brought up something very interesting in my mind that may have contributed of it on the production side. If you were watching Monday Night Football on TV, the first Monday Night Football game involving the Duval Devout in almost 12 years, Travis. 11 years, 364 days to be precise. So, yeah, that's some crazy stuff there. Every other team has had at least 8 appearances on Monday Night Football. The other 31 teams had at least 8 appearances. But the Jags, up until now, and there was celebration and joy until there wasn't, and we saw this worst-case scenario in Cincy. I mean, I don't know what more I can add to that, right?
No, I mean, you pretty much wrapped it up pretty well. A boatload of injuries, a rough game to watch defensively. Offensively, actually a very good game, in spite of, if you want to just take away that whole your quarterback got injured late in the game thing, and, potentially, losing your most reliable wide receiver earlier in the game. It was, in spite of that, it was still a very, very successful game offensively, which has been the opposite of what we said all year. So that's just the worst time for us to see that. But yeah, to your point, it's probably the worst game we've seen defensively since the first Houston game. And honestly, I think the first, no, actually, you know what? I'd probably say the first Houston game was worse only because we had most players playing. In this situation, at least there was the argument that, hey, you were missing a few guys at points. You're losing Fatukasi, Fatukasi. We lost him in the second quarter, third quarter in the game.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Folo. That's my bad, right?
Yeah. And then Trey Herndon losing him in the first quarter with the concussion. So at least you can say there was 2 guys, and they kind of honed in on those they ran the ball up the middle. They attacked the slot receiver. Like there were some pieces there. At least you can argue that they found some weaknesses there because of the injuries. But the Houston game, yeah, it was pretty rough. So nevertheless, we're not going to play who had it worse, whether it's Houston or Cincinnati. Both games were rough to watch defensively.
Oh, sure. And I mean, listen, the Texans had the special teams contribution of a fullback kickoff return touchdown as well. I think that's worth mentioning here in this comparison. But nonetheless, I mentioned something that would have been in the production on Monday Night Football involving the Taylor brothers. For those that didn't know, head coach Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals and Press Taylor are in fact related. And Travis is a very interesting concept that they might have been talking a little bit at the Thanksgiving dinner table, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. What do you think, Travis?
Hey man, I have a big brother. I have little cousins, and I know anytime we're playing basketball, anytime we're playing football in the yard, anytime we're doing any of these things, there are certain things I'm just not going to let happen. I am not going to lose against my little cousin. I am not, and one day when my kid's big enough, I refuse. I don't care if I have an amputated leg, arm, finger, whatever. I am not going to lose to my son. And this is one of those situations where you just knew it. You knew Zach Taylor watched that Buffalo Bills game from week 5 and walked away from that game saying that Jaguars didn't win that game. I believe Buffalo lost it. And the reason I say that is because this is one of the few teams that we saw run a significant amount of 12 personnel, one running back, 2 tight end situations, and ever so often 3 tight end situations, but they just didn't run the ball. Buffalo didn't. They ran like 7 rushes between their starting and their backup running back. And that was something that many fans thought killed the Buffalo Bills and probably started that whole conversation of firing their offensive coordinator. The reason I say this is because all of a sudden, we see Cincinnati do something that they hadn't done much of. They ran a significant amount of 12 personnel and even some 13, I can't even say 13 personnel, some 3 tight end situations with no running back on the field. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm like, okay. And they were successfully able to run the ball and even pass the ball out of those situations. And the Jaguars had many communication issues that because of scheme, and they had some communication issues that were also because of the players that they lost off the field. And you could easily see it on the tape. So that's kind of what I wanted to point
out. For those of us who don't know any better, I would have just dismissed it as, well, hey, you're running it a lot because you have not Joey Burr in the backfield, a.k.a. Jake Browning. By the way, his Washington team going to be in the CFP, so that I'm sure he had fun watching that early in the week too. But I say all the above to say this: Travis said a lot, but let's do a little bit of show, don't tell. Tell the people what you got here on screen.
So now we have another 2 tight end situation where they're early in the game, they're establishing the run. And again, this is a first down play. This is another explosive run where the linebackers are out of position because we have 2 to the left and 1 to the right. And now we have another 2 tight end set when they're tight to the line of scrimmage. Tyson Campbell is even trying to get into the run game instead of being in the deep third as he's supposed to be. And it's an explosive passing play. And again, 2 tight ends. This is the same one. Tyson Campbell has a deep third, but for whatever reason, he's up to the line of scrimmage thinking that the tight end's going to block. And this is over and over. You kept seeing, I left off 4 or 5 different plays and with this happening over and over, and we just weren't able to stop it. And again, another explosive play. This is in the second half of the game, and this 2 tight end set because our linebackers are either one step to the left or they're getting our secondary involved in the run game, and we're just unable to make those tackles. We're missing tackles. This is something that Mike Caldwell said in his press conference on Thursday. I wrote up about it on BigCatCountry.com. Yes. And he said it was a lot of missed tackles, but some of it was schematic. And that was what it was. They were trying to make sure to get our DBs in the run game because they know that often at the first and second down scenarios, we're going to play a little bit of cover 3 where the DBs shouldn't be involved. But if the tight end cracks, it almost forces them to get involved in that situation. So it's something that all teams can't do. You have to have the right personnel to do it. Cincinnati is just one of those teams, maybe even Buffalo, maybe even Philadelphia, but there are limited teams who can do it. And unfortunately, we ran into a buzzsaw when they were on, and they just happened to have the right guys to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to Jake Browning, too, for being able to institute it as well. But like to your point, there may be a blueprint there, and I think we alluded to this in other games. There may be a blueprint there, but you don't always have the pieces to erect the tower. I can make an argument that Atlanta has the receiver core and tight end to do this. Like I feel
Right.
like they have the similar personnel. But we were talking about this going into the show. Desmond Ridder ain't the guy to distribute the ball. I guess what
Bingo.
we just said is Jake Browning is better than Desmond Ridder. Okay, I can sign off on that.
Well, we
You know.
talked about that after the Atlanta game when we had the Duval dive, post game recap, and we talked about the fact that they had opportunities, and even in the Atlanta game, where they had guys running open, and Ritter just couldn't get them the ball. So, to your point, they have having the blueprint doesn't mean you have the guys, and that's an unfortunate situation for the Jaguars defense, where I don't believe that this issue is going to present itself every week. This is not something that I think we're even going to see in this Cleveland game, because, again, they don't have the personnel to do it. But it's to be known that the blueprint is out there, and there are some things that the Jaguars defense will struggle with unless they can figure it out.
Yeah, no, I'm with all of that there too. But there's some other self-inflicted wounds. You mentioned this whole brotherly connection and the ability to adjust to not having your starting quarterback and running the ball more. You mentioned the Jaguars defense was out of sorts. There were other ways too. I kind of felt like they were out of sorts based on what Josh Allen said in the locker room after the game. He had mentioned that we didn't know we weren't lining up right, we weren't able to get it together. Let me throw this video up so you can point out where there were communication issues in the Jags defense.
So right now we have an overload set. Again, one of those two tight end situations where we have nearly everyone to the left side of the line. And the problem with that is they end up running a counter to the backside. And it's just one of those explosive plays where the defense is talking to each other. Look at on this play, you have Andre Cisco talking to the linebackers, trying to get them lined up. No one's over the third receiver. And all of a sudden you leave Tyson Campbell on an island against Jamar Chase, and we have an explosive touchdown. All because they're just having communication issues trying to get the right guys lined up. And it's not just the D-line. It's not just the secondary. It's everyone. On this third down play, we have Rayshawn Jenkins talking to the linebackers, and he's out of position. And now they have a first and goal on the goal line. And this has just happened over and over again. We talked about this before the broadcast. I left off at least 5 to 7 more plays in which there's just communication issues where you have a linebacker out of position because he's moving the defensive tackle over or trying to, and they're not listening because they can't hear. Or you have one of the safeties trying to move Greg Jr., who's a rookie, a newer nickelback.
Player,
yeah, a newer player, and trying to get him lined up, or Antonio Johnson trying to get him lined up. And there was just a lot of that where either they didn't get the call or they simply didn't understand where they should be lined up with these certain checks that they have within the defense. And it was a mess. And many people have talked about it. Doug Peterson talked about the crowd noise and such. And Mike Caldwell also talked about the crowd noise and how they have to be better. But it was bad.
It's a hell of a note when you're talking about the other team's crowd noise in your house. I mean, that's an interesting situation too there too. But and listen, I'll say this as well. No disrespect to Dewey Wingard, but when he's on the field, you already know that there's injury issues, and so that only further complicates or rather drives up the percentage of mistake possibility, right? With when you're lining up against formations you don't typically see that are specifically designed to attack your weaknesses. And I think that's what we saw here. One wonders if Folo's still in the game if they run it as profusely, because I feel like they had a lot of negative plays early on.
True.
But I'm with you. They probably still have the Bengals probably still have production. And at the end of the day, if you're screaming at your TV wondering, why do you leave Jamar Chase open? He's good at football. Well, that's because Dre Cisco was busy aligning everybody else. I get it.
Well, it's curious, though, because a lot of their explosive run plays actually happened on first down. And I think that they saw something. They saw likely the fact that the Jaguars like to run a lot of cover 2 or cover 2 looks, basically two deep safety looks on first down. So, and that's, and interestingly, because we'll show one safety high or one safety low to the box, and he'll immediately bail at the snap. And unfortunately, they got us with a few of those explosive plays on first downs. And it's like, all right, what did they see in their film review to let them know that this was going to work?
Well, I don't watch film like you, but I would already be worried about that going in, right? How many times have we talked about this team being designed to stop the run first? So on first down, they're going to pivot to the pass more and rely on their natural talents up front to slow the run effort on a first down. That makes sense that they would attempt to do that. Again, take their strength away from them, or
Right.
exploit their weakness as they try to recover from it. There's a lot of Sun Tzu in there, right? Show your strength as a weakness and vice versa. Okay, you're so good at stopping me on the run, but I know you're compensating for the pass. I'm gonna dare you to stop me. And then once Folo was off the field, it only got that much more difficult.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is me throwing respect at Foloransu Fatukasi, because not only is his name super fun to say, and I like to be cocky about the fact that I can say and spell it without difficulty due to my practice.
Mm-hmm.
He also has to be an excellent player. It's up there with
right.
Follow, right? There's
we've seen that,
Jag fans.
We've seen that since last season. We've talked about it, and then you can say, hey, the Jaguars are going to have a bad run game when he's not in the lineup, and they're going to have a good run game when he is in the lineup. I mean, that's going back to the Philadelphia game in 2022. Like, we've been able to see that trend going on. If he's in the lineup, hey, they're going to do well. If he's out of the lineup, there may be a problem depending on how good the other team can run the ball. And so that it kind of went right hand in hand. He missed the half of a game, and they struggled running the ball this week.
Well, and you've cited several times how Buffalo didn't run the ball very much. I would imagine that Folo had a little something to do with that. Let's throw that out there,
Also true.
I mean, listen, if we were here on the Bengals Bash or whatever their version of this podcast is, one would say that we had a very interesting sample from the tight ends.
Oh, Lord. You and these dad jokes, bro.
You just mad because it was a Bengals joke. I don't blame you for it. Anyway.
That's fair.
Man, listen. Yeah, with all that in mind, making the Bengals joke, let's keep it in the AFC North with teams that wear orange helmets. I said it. They're allegedly the Browns, but them helmets are orange. All right? Don't front on me. Stick with the Bulldog, Cleveland. That's a better logo. Anyways, I said my piece. I said what I said. We can move on. Listen, for my money, this game would have been very winnable. However, there are two missing elements that scare me as an analyst, and I haven't really come to grips on how I'm going to analyze it. I can't promise that my prediction on the Jaguar report will match what I say on this podcast when we do give a score, because something might change my mind. Maybe Travis will have something in an injury report on BigCatCountry.com. That will change my mind. I don't know. But I'm worried most about these two things. A, is Trevor starting? B, if he's not, how on earth will this team react with no Walker Little and the most underrated defensive front in football right now? I'm very worried about that. Travis, am I nuts?
No, not at all. I mean, I'd be worried about that. The second piece, the Walker Little piece, whether or not Trevor does or didn't play. That was always going to be the point of this game, was how well was the offensive line going to match up against that Cleveland defensive front, and now it being a hobbled line.
Mobility is an option. Granted, less so. See, there's so many caveats here, man.
So many moving pieces to can you even score points, because these two guys who drastically impact how your offense might play. Yeah, that's a fair point. So there's a possibility that the Jaguars could end up having a starting O-line that has Blake Hance as your starting left tackle with Ezra Cleveland at left guard, or
thank goodness they got Ezra Cleveland. Dang it.
Right. Or even having Ezra Cleveland at left tackle and Tyler Shatley at left guard, because we know Ezra Cleveland was practicing with the tackles yesterday with the guards on a different part of the field while the media was present at practice. So there are a few possibilities as far as how the O-line would work, but there's also the possibility that Mr. Trevor Lawrence might actually play, which is, just wild in and of itself. The fact that he was at practice throwing, if you're a Jag fan and you're on any of the socials, you've probably seen the videos of him, moving around pretty normal looking, honestly, making
right
passes.
Next to the morons that were like, the Jags don't have a card. Really? Shouts to my guys Silu and Colin Cowherd. Y'all fools serious? Listen, I know they had the rat thing going on. That's one thing. But really, with the no card, is this what we're doing? Boy, that was dumb.
Yes, it was so dumb.
Lawrence. Listen, I'm not even a Jags fan. And members of the press going into it, I'm like, if we don't get Trevor, what's the protocol? Because I've never been in that situation, waiting for a presser. And I was said, you never know with 1-6, he may make his way out. Shouts to Mia O'Brien, of course, the 1010 Excel. That's the one who said that to me. And sure enough, here he comes, doing something you see out of WWE, and everyone's like, whoa, the Jags don't have a cart. Bruh. Okay. I said my
Yeah,
piece. I think we can all
obviously
put that.
Trevor's already confirmed that he turned down the card and everything else. It's just these.
Your source is, in fact, Trevor Lawrence. That's right.
So yeah, so he's already confirmed it. So at the end of the day, there's a possibility that Trevor would play. I've always been of the opinion that he wouldn't, and every time I've always thought this in the past, he's always ended up playing. So I don't know. It's honestly a coin flip on something that normally wouldn't be a coin flip. A high ankle sprain for most players, the week on a short week.
Yeah.
Yes, in a wet field versus a very dominant defensive front.
Great.
Normally it would be a no, they're not going to play, but yeah, I'm never going to discount Trevor because that man has he has gummy bears in his kneecaps, in his ligaments. I don't know. Shout out to his parents, man, because I don't understand how this works. But the man's been through three injuries that I thought were season ending in the past 2 years, and every time that he's playing the next week. What?
I don't know what term I have more fun with, gummy bear ligaments or lemon booty. Both of these are just fun to talk about. They both mean very different things, obviously. Perhaps if he didn't have gummy bear ligaments, you would have lemon booty. There, I worked them into the same sentence. This is awesome,
brother. on the Pro Sports Fans live broadcast of the game when he went down,
you did an excellent job on, by the way.
Thank you. No, I promise you, I had all the lemon booty when he went down. Because I mean, you can see my live reaction, and I was not expecting that, obviously, in the Monday night game, and just. All right, let me breathe. All right, give it a second. Oh my. All right, just don't cry, Travis. Just don't cry. Like it was, boy, that's a rough thing to have to go down on live TV. But knowing that he's back, knowing that he's good, seeing him throwing the helmet and everything else is just, that was a mess.
That's what made me know. That's what convinced me he'd be missing this week. But let me throw this conspiracy at you here before we go to predictions.
Yes, sir.
For my money, whether Trevor can go or not, I don't think he should, and let me tell you why. If they lose 2 in a row and Houston catches back up and they're tied, they still got the tie break, right? The best at this point Houston can do, I believe, is 4-2 in the division, right?
Okay.
The Jags, the same applies, but they also have the 2-game sweep tiebreak over the Texans head-to-head, right?
Okay.
I think giving Trevor one more week of rest and not facing this defensive front that is the Cleveland Browns with a weakened offensive front that is the mess we just described is a long-term better move, because I would imagine then you have a chance of getting both Walker Little and Christian Kirk back for one. Then Trevor has a little bit more time to heal up. That's something that's, obviously falling into the good things category.
But so at the end of there's a pro and a con on that. Honestly, there's a pro and a con on this, because if you're talking about winning the AFC South, is one conversation. If you're talking about just making the playoffs, I mean, the Jaguars, if they win just two of the next 5 games. No, I'm talking about them
being ready to face the Ravens on December 17th.
Oh, okay. So we're specifically talking about the Ravens, and in my head, I didn't care if it was the Ravens or the Browns. My thought process walking in it is, which of those games do you have a better chance of winning? Like full strength, not full strength, like whatever that works out to be. But which of those games do you have a better chance winning? The Browns with the backup quarterback, or the Ravens full strength with you maybe having a, let's say, 80-90% quarterback and potentially having Walker a little back? And that's when this gets a little messy. Yeah.
But what I hear you telling me is you're confident in Parker Washington filling that role, so maybe you go with Trevor in Cleveland. That's an interesting concept.
And then use the same game plan you used against the New Orleans Saints. Make sure he doesn't take any hits by getting the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds, no matter what.
You mean the one where he led in rushing?
That's also fair. Forgot about that.
I don't know how you do, homie.
This freaking guy.
Anyways, it's a very interesting thing to discuss. That's why I wanted to pose the question. But speaking of interesting things to discuss, Travis, tell us your thoughts on the game and what's going to happen.
Okay, so after everything's said and done, after seeing the man out on the field, running around, throwing the ball, catching, having Parker Washington catch, deep passes and everything else, I still think anybody in that front office should be fired if Trevor Lawrence takes the field. Like, that's just my thought process on this. That'd be wild. And because if he takes the field and takes an unnecessary hit, or even gets hurt or anything like
Gets hurt
that, there's
worse.
no way that everyone's not looking at this front office like, how do you have a job? Like, and that's the piece that I'm not saying. I know scared money can't make money, and scared, but nah, man, you can't do that. Just don't do it unless you know for sure he's not going to make himself first. And I don't know how you could say that with a high ankle sprain. High ankle sprain is what ruined my senior year of college. Like, so and you feel that for a full year later on some occasions. So yeah, I'm not about that.
Don't have a proverbial Joe Burnett behind him either, so there's that.
That's also fair. All right, so with all that saying, I believe CJ Beathard will end up playing this game. We'll have Nathan Rourke on from the practice squad moved up, and I still believe the Jaguars will be able to move the ball, because I actually think that they're going to be able to establish the vertical passing game a lot more, because CJ Beathard's not going to throw the ball as quickly as Trevor normally does. So there will end up being more sacks by the Cleveland defense. Again, this is my long-winded prediction. More sacks by the Cleveland defense, but also more potential for explosive plays. It may open up, they're going to run the same offense, but it's going to open up different aspects of the offense because they play different ways. My end prediction is still going to be Jaguars 23, Browns 16, squeaking out a one-score win.
That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one. And here's the thing. My prediction does something that you're not supposed to do. As a data professional, I never rely on anomalies. I feel like the Browns are going to cause some turnovers, and I think that's going to cause a problem. Your prediction is vice tight. I'm taking nothing from it. There's nothing about it with which I would disagree, save one facet. Unless, of course, there's a lot of Dearness Johnson helping in protection. Not only will the sack number be a factor, the pressures will make Beathard make mistakes. This is not me disliking CJ Beathard. That's a former 49er. I like the work he did there. I get it. But this Cleveland defense, again, is underrated. I think you are slightly underrating them here. Slightly, my friend. You have 23-16. I have 23-20 Browns. I think turnovers are going to solve this game going the wrong way. And then if they lose, on top of the fact they started Trevor, to your point, well, the Duval is going to have some lemon booty pointing in the direction of the front office.
Like so you don't believe Joe Flacco is going to be turning the ball over for the Cleveland team, for the Cleveland offense?
I believe Flacco's an upgrade, and I believe that Cleveland offensive line isn't bad. Do I think Joe Flacco will be turnover free? No, I just think he'll have fewer turnovers. Now, if he ends up with a red zone turnover, that changes everything. This is why dealing in anomalies is bad. So I'll leave all that of that. But if we're looking straight at it as a data point of who will have more turnovers, I think the Jags will have more turnovers. I think it's 23-20 Browns.
Gotcha. Close game.
Hey,
all right.
I could be wrong. But anyways, Travis, tell the world where you can be found, my guy.
I can be found on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes, whether that's Threads, Facebook, Twitter, etc. I'm never really going to call it X. It's just I'm going to roll my eyes every time I say it.
Whenever you say you're on X, that just makes people sound like you do drugs while you analyze football.
Hey man, don't judge. All right, I don't judge people that do. I ain't got nothing to do with that, man. That's live your life. Just listen to the podcast. Hit click like and subscribe. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes. You can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars on BigCatCountry.com. You can find me here every Friday at 11:15 a.m. The Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast. And you can also find me on South Florida Tribune's Inside the Pigskin podcast on Tuesdays at 8 p.m.
By the way, watch along Sunday on the Pro Sports Fans app with Travis and I having a lot of fun doing that action as well. That's must watch television. If you thought Travis did well by himself, which he did, watch the two of us be silly. The most fun you'll have on the Pro Sports Fans app. So check out the PSF app and check out the Jaguars chat where you'll see us doing the thing as well. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the gang. You can find me on Twitter as the SOTG. Find me on Instagram and Threads as the same, the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Jaguar Report. Any of the stuff I do post-game and home games is on the 3-Point Conversion YouTube channel, where you'll also find this show and the Student of the Game podcast on their iHeartRadio channel as well. That's right, the 3-Point Conversion. Also, my work with the Orlando Magic through A7BN Sports. That's a fun time all the way around. And, of course, I mentioned the Student of the Game podcast. Check that out Wednesday nights at 8:40 Eastern, through my Facebook page, through Sertoba Media's YouTube channel, through the Huddle Up Podcast YouTube channel, through the SOTG Twitch. That's right. I'm in my 40s. I got a Twitch account. What's up? Or any of those as well. Also, any of the pods. Also on oldschool101.com between 12 and 2 on Sunday to lead you in to football action for the NFL. So, for my guy, Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game of the Jaguar Report. Until next time, class dismissed.
Hey. Hey.